I think that's where the sport is headed in a lot of ways, is like just stepping back a couple steps and looking at the whole picture and saying, oh, as bike racers, we can do more. And whether that's unique projects like Cape Epic or Zwift racing or bike packing and videos, like riders can go into it where they fit.
It's showtime, everybody! Showtime!
You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Listen, we talking about practice.
Hey, Pete, on the dude's run.
Donnie, you're out of your element.
I see. You think this has nothing to do with you.
Don't ever trash talk Black Jesus.
This is the Adventure Stash with Payson McKelvin.
Thank y'all so much for listening. Today, our final installment of the Zwift Cape Epic collaboration. This episode aired a couple of weeks ago. If you missed it, I'm sorry to hear that because it was awesome. You could have ridden with Cameron Mason and Chris Blevins and asked them follow-up questions via the Zwift companion app. But this conversation, this later release, is not a bad second option. Thank you so much, Zwift, for making that series with the Cape Epic possible. That was really fun. It was long, too. We kicked things off with our podcast series, and then things kept rolling for Zwift and the Cape Epic for a while. There were races. I think it just wrapped up like last week. Rolled throughout March. Very cool. And that's kind of par for the course for Zwift, our presenting partner. There's always something happening in Watopia, and even the other worlds too. Always things happening in New York. Always things happening in London. Always things happening in Paris, France. There are so many fun courses to choose from these days and so many things to do on those courses. I highly recommend you go check it out. If you want to get your racing fix, if you just want a little social time, Zwift has you covered. Just go to Zwift.com and check out the expansive schedule of fun stuff at your fingertips. Really enjoyed this conversation with a couple of young whippersnappers. Chris is a really good friend of mine. We sort of grew up in Durango together. He very much so, literally was born there. I got to Durango as fast as I could, but as soon as I did, we hit it off. His new Trinity Racing teammate, Cam Mason, I have not met in person, but everything I can glean from the internet and the conversation we had, really impressive young guy. I love how he's hustling, love how he's a successful racer, but not resting on those laurels. He's out there making a name for himself in a lot of other ways too, off the bike. Hope you enjoy the conversation, and we will catch you at the end of the show.
Mason, what's your first race? Do you know? You got some other stuff?
I don't know. I think we're probably going to be on hold. If I had to guess, we'll be on hold until people say April, May. I think it's going to be June at the earliest, personally. I'm ready for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys are too.
Yeah, it feels like a foreign thing now. Like, it feels like all we are trainers. Like,
I know. It's weird. Yeah. We're like in the National Guard, like the reserves or something.
I'm like the very opposite of you. I'm so not ready to race. I'm
really?
I'm injured at the moment, and I got injured at the end of my cyclocross season, which ended up being a very like full-on season, even though I didn't race that much because I got injured. But
yeah, what happened? Because I got an email from Andrew because we were going to record this earlier. And He said he wanted to give you a minute to kind of like chill out and get your feedback.
So I a week before Worlds at the World Cup, I got brought down in the start straight crash on the tarmac. Literally, like I'd raced for about 10 seconds, and then there was a big pile up, and I just went straight onto my knees and my bad shoulder, which I'd broken a month before. So it was literally the worst case scenario. And then in the week, I was like trying to get back and trying to get to the start line at Worlds, and then it didn't go to plan basically. And I'm still having issues with that knee. So at least I know that the Worlds was totally out of question. And now I'm just rehabbing the knee and slowly getting back to it. But the kind of situation is that I do have a bit of time right now because things are kind of getting shuffled back. So I'm not too stressed about it. So I'm in kind of chill mode, whereas you guys are in ramp up mode, ideally, which is exciting for you guys. So,
yeah, man, sounds like an ugly crash. Like crosses, the starts are so gnarly. Like it makes mountain bike World Cups look like nothing.
Yeah, it's different, and well, yeah, you're starting on a bike that's capable of going a little bit faster, so you can like put on gears a little bit more, and yes, it was a bit hectic, but I'm glad to be home, and very looking forward to being out on a mountain bike soon.
Yeah, man.
One thing that I think is really cool and interesting about both of y'all is that you're multidiscipline athletes. Both of you get after it in cross and mountain bike, and some other stuff here and there too. Obviously, Chris has had some really successful road racing in his past. How do you balance racing year round, basically? Like, is this when you typically would take a break anyway, or is your break extra long because of the injury?
I would take a bit of downtime right now. I think, the cyclocross season didn't go perfectly for me. I think we were super lucky to actually have the amount of races we did have. In Belgium, they kept it like quite a really tight bubble, which I'm surprised looking back at it. I'm like, it was a big operation really every week, the amount of racers, the amount of staff. But in terms of COVID, they kept it pretty good. And so I would have done a lot of races, but I came into the season pretty hot and had some really kind of good rides and got third at Euros, which I was super happy with. And then I ended up breaking my collarbone in a race in the sand, which was not ideal. And I rehabbed from that. And then I was kind of aiming for Worlds. And then I injured my knees in the World Cup in Overijse. And then, since I've been home, I think you're probably not a very good athlete if you're good at being injured, if that makes sense. Like, do you know what I mean? If you don't care about being injured, you probably don't like riding your bike enough. So being injured is rubbish. But I've been trying to find some other things, and I had quite a few videos to edit, which is good and bad. Like, I'm editing footage of me like absolutely smashing it and like doing bunny hops. I'm like, this is a bit sad, but it's productive. That's the main thing. It's productive. And that's what I've been focusing on. There's some things I can do with my knee to rehab, but then the rest is just being patient. So for now, it's doing those jobs and just enjoying being at home and planning for the year as well, because I think all things that you can't control aside, I think it'll be a fun year with the team and then with my own goals as well.
Yeah. That's one of the best ways I think I've ever heard that said. Basically, if you're an athlete that isn't frustrated by injuries, then you probably have a problem. That's, for some reason, that's really consoling. Like, as frustrating as injuries are, it's good that you're frustrated by them, because that means the fire's there. Kind of like when you're really nervous on a start line. If you're not nervous before races anymore, it's maybe a red flag. But Chris, what are you doing with your preseason besides massive hours? You also are a multidiscipline athlete, obviously, and also, like Cam, this is another subject I want to get into soon, just have really diverse interests. You guys are some of the best bike racers in the world, but you also have interests outside of bike riding and racing. Cam, obviously, you have all of your media stuff, which is super cool. Chris, too, making music, and I can't even keep track of all the other things you're doing. What's your preseason looking like? You said Eddie Anderson's hanging out with you now, logging some hours. What's your preseason looking like?
Yeah, on the bike, it is certainly ramping up. Definitely, last year by now I would already finished a Europe trip, which is weird. And I don't think our first racing will be until April at the earliest in Europe. But yeah, I got a really big couple weeks now. So I'm glad we're doing this talk before it starts, because I'd be a ghost in the shell for most of it. And then I've got 4 weeks left of school officially. And then I'm graduating. So I already have like 2.5 feet out the door. And it'll be really underwhelming with no ceremony or anything, but that'll be nice to, just be done. And then I'll still be here in San Luis Obispo until June, but trying to do, a million things at once, which when you have kind of a week like I have now, I'm trying to learn to, to focus again. And just chill when I'm not smashing myself on the bike. But yeah.
What all do you have going on off the bike right now?
Well, school is one thing, but honestly, that's kind of
formalities at this point.
Yeah, right. Truly. Although I'm in an advanced poetry class, which with a bunch of English majors that are majoring in it, and so I'm a little out of my league, but that is pretty time consuming in a good way. And then I'm working on a couple video projects that I'll shoot this spring that are exciting. And then I'm really I'm on the advisory board of Silver Stallion, which for people listening, I'll give the 10-second if I can. I could talk for hours on this, but
take your time. I mean, this is a great subject that personally I've wanted to learn more about. So
yeah.
Don't rush it.
I'll try to be brief, but it's this nonprofit in Gallup, New Mexico, which is only a couple hours from Durango, where Pace and I live. And their mission is to provide bikes to the neighboring regions, which is predominantly the Navajo reservation. And there's also the Hopi and Zuni reservation. And on the 27,000 miles of the Navajo Nation, there's not a single bike shop. So Silver Stallion built this like mobile bike shop to go out and service bikes. And now they're hosting like kids rides that'll morph into having a Devo program, having this big trail building initiative. So I'm just kind of hoping to help from a 30,000 foot perspective, and then eventually get down there and ride with the kids. So it's really rewarding, and just to kind of see what the bike can do in this way. And honestly, if that kind of is a job of sorts that replaces kind of my commitment to school come April, I'm pretty stoked with that. So I got to finish school first. So
yeah, I want to come back to that in just a second, but throwing it back to you, Cam. What's your relationship with education been? Is that something that you've continued to want to prioritize, or is it something you're kind of putting on the shelf for the time being as you pursue your racing career? What does that look like? Because you're at kind of that tricky age where your career is really starting to take off, but you're still so young that you could be doing some sort of higher education program as well.
Yeah, I think at the end of secondary school, high school, it was things naturally kind of went towards the bike as I kind of made decisions that were around me enjoying it and things like that. And at a time where you had to put a little bit more effort and energy into the kind of education side of things, like if you wanted to really push to go to university or push to kind of go to that next level, I didn't bother, which was kind of a natural progression. But it was never about closing doors. It was literally like just trying to take ones that were open. And at that time, there were like these awesome doors opening up in cycling. I was like, yeah, let's just like push through for that. And it was I never sat down and was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. It was relatively natural. So then I find myself like in a kind of UCI team with all these other opportunities. And I can't see why I wouldn't kind of keep pushing on with that. So that's at the moment, I don't really have any plans to go with those other education options, but who knows, like if I found something I could spend hours and hours a day like going into, then that's what it's for. But at the moment with my other interests and bike riding, I have enough to kind of put my energy and put my time into.
For sure. Yeah. I think some folks that haven't spent time racing or riding at the level that y'all are at, sometimes forget or don't even know what a time commitment just the training is, and taking care of your body. And when you're at home, taking care of bikes and all of the logistics, making routes, keeping track of the long-term build, all that sort of thing. Chris, you were saying, you were describing the training week you have coming up, and it's crazy. I mean, it is a full-time job, and yet you have school and you also have all of these other off-bike passions. Having gone through that myself, I know how stressful that can be. Looking back, Chris, at where you are now athletically, and also that you're about to get your education, undergrad degree, do you feel good about putting yourself through all that, doing both? Do you look back happy that you went ahead and punched out some college. And when I say some college, I mean a 4-year program.
Yeah, no, I really do. And honestly, I've been really fortunate to have like things line up in a lot of ways. Like I take the spring quarters off and I'm in a beautiful place in California. So it could have been a lot rougher. I could have had a major that a lot of my friends are in. And honestly, I'm in a pretty easy major considering what the engineers go through at Cal Poly. But yeah, I mean, in my situation, it was perfect, and it's really different for everyone. But it's worked out for me for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about that before we jump fully into bike riding, Cape Epic, all that sort of thing, because I do want to talk about the Cape Epic a good bit. I want to talk about these off-bike interests outside of school, all that sort of thing. Cam, you have some really awesome media stuff you're doing. You have your YouTube channel that really seems to be growing. You have a big following on Instagram, that sort of thing. Having done a little bit of video editing, I know how labor intensive it is. And you just pump out these videos. You have first of all, the first thing I noticed is incredible race footage. A lot of times people do vlog style recaps of their races, and there's a whole lot of selfie stuff going on, a whole lot of GoPro stuff going on, but you have for real race footage and a lot of it. And one of my first thoughts was, man, how does he pull this off? And then it's all cut together nicely. You have some post-race recap stuff where you sit down in what looks like, it might not officially be a studio, but it looks good. It looks like some sort of interview setting. And it just looks super pro, and the editing is done really well. So my question is, when did you get into that? When did you decide that this was something you wanted to jump into the deep end with? And why? Like there are plenty of racers that have a media component, but it seems like you're taking it to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, first off, credit to my filmer Dave, who does most of the filming in Belgium. That's partly his all of his work, and it's been a little bit harder with COVID and all of that, and that was kind of a reason for the lower amount of videos. But no, it was always like, it was kind of from me. It was like, what do I enjoy watching, and what would I want to see? So that's why I think a lot of my stuff is quite bike orientated. It's not as much kind of vloggy, chatty. It's like, what do I enjoy watching? And it's videos like I grew up watching like the Atherton Project, like all of those videos on Red Bull, and all of the Specialized Factory racing videos. And it is quite action focused. It's not as much about the person as much. So that's kind of, I guess maybe what has pushed me towards it. But yeah, when I was younger, just mucking about with camera, and then as I got older and was doing more cool things as these opportunities came, like with the Scottish cycling program, we went to Girona for the first time and raced. It was just the perfect way to like capture all these fun things that I was doing as like a 16, 17-year-old, which is, I just felt super grateful for. But then I could actually capture it on video and try and show other people in a show off way, like, look how cool this is. But then as you get better at it, it turned into like, you can actually like inspire people and show people, how much enjoyment you can get out of riding the bike. Because I think what I found last year making videos was, it's literally just a tool to show people what's possible. And just like writing is, or just like making other forms of it, or of media, like it's about getting your point across, getting your story across. And as you say, the video editing takes a long time, but I get a lot of kind of value out of it. So I find it really kind of, rewarding process at the end of it all. However many hours it was, you have this kind of project that anyone can view anywhere around the world, and I can watch it again, because I watch all my own videos. I'm not ashamed to like go back and watch my own videos, because I've spent that long working on some of them that you almost get it, that feeling a second time around when you watch it again, because you're like, you've relived the experience, and then you're also just happy with how it's come out. So that's and as I've been a little bit injured, I'm like, I go back and watch my videos from last summer. I'm like, that was so good. And I have these little packages that I can relive with.
Yeah. Is it truly another passion for you? Is it something that, you're sitting there daydreaming on the bike on a long ride, and you're thinking about some cool video idea you have, or fun thing you want to do? editing wise, or is it something that you do more to supplement your cycling career at this point, would you say?
It was always like a kind of a bike come first thing. Like I would be going to do these races anyway, so why not make a video, and like why not turn it into a story? But then last year, with just the lack of racing, I ended up like, what would look good on video, or like what good story can I look out for, and then make that into a video, which it was a different way of going at it, and made me think, like, if I was to do this properly as a video producer, or as someone who does this as a job, like how you would actually go about looking for those things. And I think what we have seen over the last like year or so is, with the lack of racing, these companies trying to go out and find media and find stuff around things that aren't racing. So yeah, these big brands paying a lot of money to look at these other stories to keep people inspired. One, just off the top of my head, was the West Highland Way record attempt that Rab Wardell did with Wahoo. That's a big project and has nothing to do with racing, but is just as insightful and just as motivating as these Tour de France or big mountain bike races. And that kind of put a lot of people in check, being like, it's maybe not all about the racing. And that is what I did kind of dip into a bit last year, but while also missing the racing, because there's nothing really that can replace that for me. But
yeah, I think one thing that's been interesting is people starting to notice that the bike industry had its largest year in sales by leaps and bounds, I assume ever, at least in a long, long time, in a year when racing was almost completely on hold. And I think brands are maybe starting to realize, maybe we don't have to completely live and die by race marketing. There's these other ways to diversify. But Chris, you have many things that you like to do off the bike. You're on Spotify. That's so cool. Not just as like some lowly podcaster, as a for real musical artist. What's the latest as far as the studio goes?
Oh man, honestly haven't like worked on a full song in quite some time, but I did this animation project with my friend Nico from Durango, and we've got this kind of series of those that are hopefully, I don't know, there's a lot that needs to align because I'm working with like a music producer, and it's just this really cool blending of creative outlets. Like there's the animation, my poetry, and then the soundscape music, and I want all of them to kind of have a voice on their own. But so that's kind of a fun project that I feel like, once I have the bandwidth for, I really want to have some fun with. But yeah, man, no album on the horizon. Sorry to let the fans down.
Well, I guess I'd like to know more bigger picture then. I mean, you have the social work you're doing with Silver Stallion. You have your more artistic, creative stuff you're doing. From what I'm asking this mostly for the listeners, because I'm pretty sure I know the answer at this point, but that off the bike stuff, to me, it seems like you have to have it to be happy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I don't know. One thing I think I've learned in the past like year or two, I've had a tendency to try to do everything at once. I think right now I'm at a point, it's this brief window of finishing school, but like throughout school, like I wanted to be a full-time college student. I wanted to be a full-time racer. And when those things weren't compatible, like I'd, overextend myself, and I kind of living in this frantic, like do everything state. And I've realized it's much better to have balance with one thing and like a full perspective. But if I'm just racing my bike and just focusing on that from now, through this year and certainly through the Olympics, then like, that's okay. Like I can let things, go and come back to them. So if that makes sense, it's more of a balance. Like what I'm learning, what's important is a balance in perspective. And even if you're just doing one thing, then a balance in actually doing everything at once. But yeah, I mean, all the off the bike things matter to me truly, as much as racing my bike, in a different way. But I think it's, it motivates me when it's time to really smash the pedals when I got other things going on outside of it.
Yeah. That's good to hear. I like that perspective too, that you don't have to have other interests and be diversified doesn't mean you always have to be doing everything physically. Like you can kind of shelve one, focus on something, come back to it. It's not necessarily going to go away. That's cool.
It's kind of like depth over breadth sometimes, like go in on one thing and actually be fully present for it. And I think we are so caught up in trying to be and do everything that you forget about that sometimes.
Yeah. And you can put different hats on, can't you? You don't have to be in your lane all the time. You can, if you're going in the right direction, you can have all these different ways to get about it. Right. And I'm sure all those other things that you have going on, actually, if you balance them right, will elevate each other. You can, do better bike riding because you're doing well in this bit, or you can, because you're taking your mind away from it and then the bike is doing something else. So I think that's something I realized last year as well, that it can't all be about one thing, because then that one thing becomes too much. So you need these other things to take away and to add on.
Yeah, definitely.
Cam, is there anyone that you admire or look up to who has the sort of media presence that you're trying to build? Anyone come to mind?
I know when you say that, I think about the people who maybe don't more than do. Like, I find that the mountain bikers are actually, like, without a doubt, really good at it. And if you just take that and totally compare it to the road riders, they're just not as good. And I think that's something that definitely, whether they would want to or not, would to learn from. And just I don't know, if I was just the way that I grew up was watching mountain biking, and it's just always seemed way more kind of inclusive and just, you feel like, as I said before, like I grew up watching the Atherton projects that were made by Clay Porter, and I felt like I knew those people, like, personally, and there's just none of that in road racing. It's a little bit more sterile. It's on the TV and that's it. Like, and these are the riders that you see them in an interview and then that's all you see of them. And I think maybe riders like, I think Theo Gegenhardt, by winning the Giro, maybe kind of pushed him to a level that he could be himself. And that's really interesting. Guys like, generally younger guys like Egan Bernal, a little bit more kind of approachable, and his English is really like good. And whereas you kind of have these older road riders who don't quite make themselves as approachable maybe to the younger generation. And that's definitely changing. And another one like Remco Evenepoel and Tom Pidcock, like guys who just seem like they're just having a little bit more fun in a different way. And to someone my age, like that's exactly what I want to see. So maybe that's why the mountain bikers, like pro downhillers and XC riders, seem a little bit more look up to them a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a cool observation. It does seem to an extent to be a generational thing, including the multidiscipline aspect. Like we saw riders back in the day start in one discipline and kind of switch disciplines, but it seems more and more common to have, the Wout van Aerts of the world or the Van der Poels of the world, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, whoever it is, doing multiple disciplines at the highest level and continuing to do it, which is really cool. Maybe that's something that y'all will keep doing too. Chris, who are some people that kind of make your list of inspirations?
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of people just on an everyday basis that I admire, right? And like just in different ways. In the sport on a near level, like we love Sepp, and I have all the respect in the world for Sepp Kuss and, the person he is and how he approaches the sport. And there's such a quiet confidence and like a humility that is just unique to Sepp. And we know how fun he is too. So in the sport of, mountain bike, there's tons of people. I mean, like Kate is an incredibly hard worker, from that level, it's inspiring to everyone. There's people I think that just see the bike as a means to like explore themselves and to explore the world. And that's like in general, whether you're racing and that's your way of exploring it, or you're bike packing or whatever. And the people that really got that spark in the sport, that's what I admire. They don't necessarily, have to have a big flashy Instagram or social media presence, but I think you can kind of tell when someone's like, they're really riding that bike and they're really wanting to share that bike. So yeah.
Let's talk Cape Epic. One thing that I think is amazing that I didn't know before we logged on is Cam was on a little early. I was a minute or two late. Chris was a couple minutes after that. And so Cam and I chatted for a minute, and then Chris logged on, and Chris was like, "Hey, Cam, it's nice to meet you." And I was like, "What? This is amazing. Breaking news." We have, for this Cape Epic series, we have across the spectrum, we have Annika Longvod and Kate together, which is a great storyline because Annika just dominated the Cape Epic for a period of time, and Kate came in during that time and sort of was like the disciple, and they won together. And then we're going to have Nino and Lars together, which is going to be amazing because they're obviously Nino Schurter and Lars Forster, very dominant athletes in the sport. And we're going to have Alex Howes and Lachlan Morton, two guys from a road background who they'll admit don't really know what they're getting themselves into, but are very established and know each other really well and publicly are super buddy-buddy. And then we have you two who have also never done Cape Epic and don't know each other personally yet, and yet are young, have a lot of enthusiasm, and certainly accomplished in your own rights. So I'd like to jump in a little bit to just, when I say the Cape Epic, what are you guys feeling in regards to that as a challenge? Obviously, there needs to be some team chemistry to find some success. I can already tell that you two are going to get along great as teammates. But from that, like when you put that race on a pedestal, what a lot of people call the Tour de France of mountain biking, what do you feel? Is it intimidating? Is it exciting? Is it dream come true? What comes to mind? You can go first, Cam.
Daunting probably, because you just, from what I've seen, there's just a whole load more aspects to it, basically. The amount of more hours you are on the bike for things to go wrong, the amount of, just logistics. Like if you look at cyclocross and just take it as it is, it's relatively simple. Yeah, there's fancy bike changes and stuff, but it's like 1 hour and it's one circuit and you know the course anyway. Like there's a lot more things you can control. Whereas the amount of madness that goes on in one stage of a Cape Epic, I can imagine you could write a book about, like mechanicals, wildlife, route, anything I'm sure could and will happen. So yeah, I guess it will be one thing we'll have to kind of work on is being okay with things that you can't control and just knowing that you'll be able to do the business. And then obviously from a physical side, like there's a lot of gaps I think in my in my Palmares that wouldn't really point towards a race like Cape Epic, but yeah, I think in the next few years to give that a shot would be some goal, isn't it?
Yeah. Chris, you have a little bit more stage racing experience, I think. You did, was it Swiss Epic with Keegan that year?
Yeah.
Is that right? And I remember that was quite the experience. Y'all did great. I mean, obviously you had setbacks, but it seemed like you were holding your own fine. What do you think when you hear Cape Epic, and theoretically that's something I'm going to do with Cam in the nearest future?
Yeah. Well, daunting is a good way to put it, as Cam said. And then I don't know. I think it's the pinnacle of really experience racing. Like it's such an intersection of those, amateur mass participation, like life-changing event, and then the highest level mountain bike stage race in the world, period. Like that's such a cool crossroads that, people literally, I don't think it's a stretch to say that this race changes their lives. Whether you're Nino Schurter or some person who's just doing 10 hours every day trying to make it and then crawling back in a tent, sleeping on the ground. I hear they wake up to Swiss bagpipes. Not excited for that, but I don't know. It's just what the race means to the sport. So daunting, but also, incredibly excited to have that experience myself. I think you really got to go in obviously prepared, but also like ready to get rocked and deal with things and adapt. I certainly will have to learn how to use a Dynaplug a little quicker and stuff like that. Cam, if you got skills in there, then maybe we'll be good.
Yeah, Cam, how are your mechanic skills?
Well, my dad probably would say they're not very good, but there'll be that one moment though that we'll have a slashed open tire and I'll be there with like this little 1 centimeter Dynaplug and oh well, what are we gonna do? I've seen the behind the scenes stuff of the guys kind of working out kind of mechanics on the fly and that type of stuff, which is not something you usually think about. But when you're in the middle of nowhere and you need to get to the finish and bring it home, then obviously is another aspect.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, talk to me a little bit about what your observations were in regards to that duo dynamic. Like, what did you, following your Swiss Epic experience with Keegan, what are some things that you know going forward that might help you in another duo format stage race like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really unique. Like, there's so many things that go into it. Like, invariably, there's always one person who's a little stronger. So it's like, how do you work with that and build the other person along and just like use your strengths in different places. It's also, I think, just having a buddy, like in any case, is more motivating when you're out there suffering. And it's just a cool format. Like, the fact that you have to wait with your teammate if people are attacking on the front, or how do you go into a finish when there's two teams battling it out? Like, who attacks first? And that was really unique in the Swiss Epic with Keegan. We had a couple like sprint finishes with Andre and Matthias, who won the race, and like they were just crazy. Like I remember talking to Keegan in between stages and trying to figure out like what the strategy is when you're with your teammate and how you do it. So yeah, it's a unique thing, and I think this Cape Epic race wouldn't be smart without a partner for a lot of people. Like, you need someone out there to motivate you, to help you like change your tire and all that, because it's just so raw and rugged and grueling. So yeah, you definitely bond a lot. So Cam, even though we haven't met in person and talked much, when we do Cape Epic, if we do it this year, we'll certainly bond in that trailer and on the trails.
Yeah, I mean, I know how dark you can go individually, but then when you do it with someone else, it's always a different experience, isn't it? Because yeah, you've got to pull each other through an experience like that, I guess. Yeah. And then remember that it's a fast-paced race and you can't let the ball drop and all that. And yeah, when you talk about all of the like tactic stuff, I'm like, oh my God, it's a whole nother aspect to it. Like, it's not just you. It's not just, yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about using your strengths and helping other riders. And because yeah, it's like people talk about drafting and all of that, but riding with someone is so much more than just sitting on that wheel, isn't it? So, and then in mountain biking, you've got downhills, you've got transitions, like rock gardens, all of this, like to do that with someone else over the space of 4 or 5 hour race is mentally a whole different game that I don't know anything about. So there's some work to be done.
Yeah. That's a really cool point, actually, Cam. I never thought of it that way, but I've never done a duo stage race, but I've done a few road races. So I have felt that team dynamic. And I know what you're saying when you have a team that's keeping you accountable and you want to do well for the team, whether it be a domestique role or you're in a leadership role and you just don't want to let your other teammates down. You go so deep. And it seems like you just find this extra gear when you're in it together versus, say a cyclocross or mountain bike race where it's very much more individual. I can't imagine what it's like as a duo when it's just two of you like that. And you just don't want to, it's almost like you're you're like a marriage for 7 days or 8 days. You're just like very together in this, in this sentence of challenge.
I've seen other people talking about like big endurance events, like 24-hour races, and you can do them in like a solo or a pair or like a quad. And the people who are in pairs are always like, man, I wish I was in like a trio or just on my own, because then there'd be more than one person, or it would just be myself. Like if it's just two of you, you've only got one person to disappoint. Whereas if you're doing it on your own, then it's only yourself that you're going to let down. Or if you're doing a 4, then there's a few of you. But I guess in a pair, it's quite a full on thing. But over the however long Cape Epic will be, however many stages, I'm sure there will be a lot learned, whether there's a result at the end of it or not.
Yeah, we've sort of joked a little bit about the fact that Chris has done one of these, and Cam, you're a cross racer, so you race an hour or an hour 15. But to be fair, I mean, you've done some very seriously huge bike rides, I've noticed, and I've even seen some photos of bike packing setups. So I have to assume from a depth standpoint, you'll do fine. I'm kind of curious what your bikepacking experience or like ultra distance experiences have been like. What have you done in that regard, and why have you decided to dip a toe in that? Where did that interest come from?
Yeah, I don't have a huge amount of experience, but that's something it's kind of a good thing being a noob at something. You make mistakes, and that's actually quite fun. And especially, well, in bikepacking, those mistakes can be a bit dangerous, but as long as you kind of keep things within your limits, then you'll be all right. But last year, with the kind of lack of racing around July and August, I basically set a route that went from my hometown near Edinburgh all the way up to the highest road in Scotland, which was like 450 Ks and most of it off-road. And I had just a baby with me, and I was like, well, however many days it takes, it'll take as long as that. So I did it in 2 days, 2 very long days. And I think it was 12,000 meters of climbing in 2 days.
Oh.
It basically took over some of the massive passes, gravel passes. They're not that big compared to the Alps, but for Scotland, it's like long climbs. And yeah, you learn a lot about yourself in those type of things. Yeah, on a normal training ride, you go pretty deep, but it's a very different type of deep that you can go to in these long distance stuff, like really mentally. And yeah, a little bit inspired, well, mostly inspired by some of the stuff that Lachlan Morton has been doing in the last few years. Just seeing how he goes about his bike riding is super inspiring, and why wouldn't you want a piece of that? So that was a big kind of push for me. And I think I have a little bit of that in my head, like that little bit of like madness gene, but nowhere near as much as him. Like there's something like properly wrong with him. So that's
so true.
and all of these guys, like ultra endurance guys, they're a different breed in their own right. And I have a little bit of that, I think, but not to the extent. I did another good trail in the summer called the Capital Trail, which is a circular route based around the capital of Scotland, and it's 250 kilometers, pretty much all off-road. And they say it's a mountain bike trail, so me and my friends decided to do it on gravel bikes, which was a bad idea. And I will be going back on a mountain bike, but that was a really good one. So that was 16 hours of solid riding in one, and 4,500 meters of climbing in one sitting, which was the main thing really. It was always up or always down. So I actually built up quite a big engine, I think, in that respect. So if I can get to that level again, then yeah, I think I'll be able to get around. That's the idea.
Yeah, it's crazy when you first do one of those ultra rides, whether it be a full-on bike packing or just a crazy long 16 plus hour ride like you're talking about, because you sort of, as bike riders, we're used to pushing ourselves so far and thinking you hit rock bottom, and then you discover that actually when you hit rock bottom, you can somehow like rise from the ashes like a phoenix, and then you're on a high and you're killing it again, and then here comes rock bottom again, and you just go through these cycles. It's like, yeah, usually over the course of a 5 or 6 hour ride, that would happen. You'd hit rock bottom and be like, okay, I'm done for the day. But if you just multiply that times 3, times 5, times 10, you just keep going through these cycles. It's really quite the wild thing. And yeah, speaking of guys like Lachlan, it just blows my mind. The fact that they're able to combine that sort of riding with a more traditional racing. I mean, I forget what event it was.
He did the Giro. He did the Giro at the end of how many rad events that he did last year. He went and the Giro obviously is a massive feat of endurance, but you've got to ride up hills at like 450 watts everywhere. So like, yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and start wrapping this up with a little bit of talk of the program, Trinity. Cam, you have been on the program for a couple of years. Chris, you're newer to it. It's somewhat of an unusual model, I would say. It's got a big roster, which my understanding is sort of a new aspect also. Obviously, Tom Pidcock was kind of the face of this program in the past, and it's continuing to expand and really grow. Talk to me a little bit about who the team is, what your impressions have been thus far as being part of the team, and we'll kind of go from there. I guess I'll throw it to Chris first as the newbie. I know you don't have too much to go off of since the announcement is fairly recent, and I don't think you've even had a team camp or anything yet, but Talk to me a little bit about Trinity Racing.
Yeah. Well, it's a big roster with the road team. And I think there's a lot of people there I probably won't cross paths with. In general, for me, like it just allows so much freedom to really like dip my toe into different disciplines, but still focus, on the World Cups and on the Olympics. I think that's where the sport is headed in a lot of ways, is just stepping back a couple steps and looking at the whole picture and saying, oh, as bike racers, we can do more. And whether that's unique projects like Cape Epic or Zwift racing or bike packing and videos, or it's traditional road stage races and mountain bike World Cups. I think that what Trinity is going to evolve into is just something that can really see that whole outline, and riders can go into it where they fit. So that's why I'm really excited about it. The mountain bike side of it, it'll be myself, Haley Batten, this Italian girl that's really fast, and then a Brazilian U23, first year U23. So Haley and I have been teammates for on and off for like 8 years now, which is crazy. I think it's been 8 years, but yeah.
That's hard to believe because you're both babies, but
I'm getting old, man.
We'll roll with it.
But so, yeah, I mean, we'll race together in the US and it'll just be us and it'll be small. But when we go to the World Cups, it'll be a little bigger, like hopefully Cam's there. But yeah, I mean, it's just cool that there'll be Trinity jerseys, like in all these different platforms around the world. And yeah, it's really exciting, and it's youthful, and it's like a unique take on this sport.
Yeah, that's definitely my impression as well. Cam, you've been a part of the program since I think you said 2019. Talk a little bit about the way it's evolved over those few years. What are your impressions in terms of its growth and the direction it's going?
Yeah, so when I joined, basically Tom DM'd me on Instagram asking if I wanted a ride for the cyclocross season, and I was like, hell yeah, why wouldn't I want a ride with Tom and doing all this stuff? And at that point, it was literally, that was it, face value. I was going to ride for them for cyclocross. And then as it evolved and things were happening with Tom, these opportunities came up in road and mountain bike as well, which, yeah, was perfect for me. And I think, yeah, where it's gone and seeing the roster and all of this, it's a cyclist development team. It's not putting anyone into a hole of like who they are. It's kind of just this platform for everyone to perform at their best, and yeah, be bike riders, because there's so much undiscovered potential within these riders. Like Tom Pidcock didn't know that he was this good on a mountain bike, for example, or like you just have to try it basically. And hopefully with these new paths, like linking up with you guys, you and Haley, Chris, yeah, hopefully just gives riders these opportunities to try these things and see if the potential is there, because it's a group of really motivated young riders, and then a really kind of strong support network of guys who've been in different parts of the industry, and yeah, the idea to kind of bring that all together. So from the inside and the outside, it works well. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, it's good to see a program that potentially is a little bit more open-minded like that, rather than, it was maybe just 15 years ago that the model was more, let's identify some talent at a very young age, put them on a fast track to that discipline, give them all the resources they need and support and focus to dedicate themselves to that discipline from day one so that they can maximize. And it's interesting to see the evolution of that. And I think it's probably in large part due to the success of the Marianne Vosses of the world, Pauline's, whoever it is, in Matthew Vanderpool, like we talked about earlier, just sort of setting the tone for, no, actually, you can be successful at a bunch of different disciplines, and maybe at times they actually complement each other.
Yeah, and it's what the brands want as well. Like if you're sitting there with a rider like Matthew Vanderpool, then you're loving it because you've got multiple bikes, multiple disciplines. So yeah, why wouldn't a big brand want to get on board with a team like Trinity, because they have the opportunity to kind of push everything at their customers.
Absolutely. Sweet, guys. That's about all I had. Any other topics you wanted to touch on before we call it a wrap here?
Well, I was just gonna say, either way, whether it's with Cam or Payson, I got to get on a bikepacking trip with one of you guys, because I've never
Absolutely.
been.
It'll change your life.
Yeah.
And it'll make the rest of bike riding feel so easy.
Yeah, it'll make 90 kilometers look like it will go in a flash. It changes your whole like level of how long bike rides should take.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. Well, yeah, this was fun.
Cool, guys. Enjoy the rest of your days. I hope you stay warm up there, Cam, and heal up. Hope to see you shredding outside again soon. Until then, we'll keep an eye out for those edits. Is your YouTube channel just what is your YouTube channel again? Sorry, Cameron.
It's just Cameron Mason. So if you type in Cameron Mason, then the idea is that it will come up at the top.
Love it. And Chris, if people want to find you on Spotify, how do they do that?
Yeah. Christopher Blevins. I feel like there's another guy named Chris Blevins. Don't get me confused with I don't know. He's like some folk singer, so that's not me.
Yeah, and both of y'all are on Instagram, obviously, as well. Just full names? Chris, are you Chris Blevs, maybe?
Yeah, Christopher Blevs.
Yeah.
And I'm Camerooni, so Camerooni Mason.
Nice. All right, gents. Thank you much. That was fun. Great to get to know you a little bit, Cam. I hope you guys get to link up and smash out some miles in South Africa. It'll be fun to follow.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Cool.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for listening, and thank you to our presenting partner, Zwift, for making it possible. This was the final installment of our Zwift Cape Epic collaboration. I would love to do more things with Zwift in the future. Time will tell whether that comes to fruition, but they're not waiting around for me. There's literally something happening every minute of the day on Zwift. You can go to Zwift.com and check out the full listing of events that you can get involved in. There are fun group rides, there's competitive group rides, there's races, anything and everything. There's guided training. No matter what you're looking for, there is a community doing it, no matter the time of day, no matter what Zwift world you want to ride in, whether it's New York, whether it's France, whether it is Watopia, of course. Pick your poison. It's there for the taking. Hats off, Zwift. Y'all have absolutely revolutionized riding inside to the point where I don't even think of it as riding inside anymore. It's just another awesome option. Thanks also to Lily McKelvin for editing and producing the show. Thanks to y'all for listening. Please leave a rating, leave a review, go subscribe, spread the word. Word of mouth goes a long way. And we will catch you next week.